Chapter 16. Anaya waited impatiently as the soldier clicked icons at his console. The video quality's pretty poor, the soldier apologized. Sound, too. Anaya didn't care about any of that. Back in the lab, she dragged her clothes on so fast, her top was inside out. She wanted to see her father right now. Beside her stood Petra, Dr. Weber, and Seth, whose arms were wrapped up and hidden inside his hoodie. She cast a nervous glance just to make sure no blood had soaked through his sleeves. Colonel Pearson loomed nearby, in the dim comms room, watching the monitor. It flared to life, and Anaya's heart clenched at the sight of her father's face. It was almost unrecognizable. Dirt was smeared across his cheeks and clotted thickly in his hair, as if he'd been rolling around like a crazed animal. He'd tied a cloth across the lower half of his face, covering his nose and mouth. The whites of his eyes looked enormous and wild as he shouted, "Can't! Off!" The sound cut in and out, and the image kept pixelating and freezing. "Where is he?" Anaya croaked. He was definitely outside, but it looked awfully dark for daytime. Why was he so dirty? "Can you give us your location, sir?" the comms officer asked on the recording. Static ate up her father's first few words, and then, "Dova." "Can you confirm your location, please, sir?" "Cordova," Anaya exclaimed. He said Cordova. "It's an eco-reserve." Dad's face took up most of the screen, but those were definitely trees behind him. They grew so high and thick that virtually no light made it through the branches. Dad's face pixelated again. "Lake. Can't get off." "There's a lake," Anaya said, remembering, "and a little island in the middle. Maybe he's stuck there." "They're everywhere," Dad said. Anaya's throat tightened in fear. She'd never seen her father look so desperate. "They're everywhere." She could only assume he meant the cryptogenic plants, or was it something worse? "Is dead," Dad was saying. "Sir," said the comms officer voice in the recording, "can you please confirm? Is someone dead?" Anaya swallowed. Did he mean Amit? She hadn't seen him in the background anywhere. Then she pointed at the screen. "What are those?" Behind her father, two snakes dangled down, but they weren't snakes, they were black vines, winding their way in midair toward her father. "Turn around," she couldn't help shouting at the screen. "Works," Dad was shouting now. "The soil." Something hit him in the neck with wet splash. "What was that?" Petra cried. The camera shook as Dad swiped at his neck like he'd just been stung. His face creased with pain, and Anaya felt her own face crumbled as she watched, helpless. "Dad!" She gave a yelp as the phone was yanked out of her father's hand by something unseen. Dad made a grab for it, but it was already out of reach and rising even higher, still filming him. "Soil! It kills them!" he bellowed. Then all Anaya could hear was the crackle of the air as the phone was whipped higher still. She was trembling so badly she could barely breathe. "What's got his phone?" Seth gasped. As if in answer, something dark and thin jagged across the screen like a crack, followed by another and another, until the screen went completely dark and then hissed with static. "The vines," Petra said, sounding dazed. "They snatched it out of his hand." "That's all of it," the colonel said. Anaya forced some air into her lungs. Dad was alive. At least he was alive. But for how long? "Something hit him," she said. "All of that wet stuff on his neck. Was that acid?" "I'm sorry you had to see that," Dr. Weber said quietly to her. The colonel said, "Perhaps it would have been better not to." "Please, can we go get him right now?" Anaya cried. The colonel turned his deeply lined face to her, and she realized how weary he was. "I have a city of millions under siege, Miss Riggs, and limited resources. Right now, almost all my troops are trying to rescue people trapped inside homes with plants that are gassing and strangling them. If I call off some of my soldiers, that's fewer families I can help, just to rescue a single man." For a moment, Anaya couldn't speak. It was like he was accusing her of something terrible and selfish. Of course she didn't want other people to suffer or die, but of course she also wanted to save her own father. Excuse me. "But you heard what he said. He's found soil that kills the plants," the colonel said. "That was far from clear to me." "Colonel Pearson," Petra said, "if he's found something that kills—" "If." Naya looked over at her friend. and saw she wasn't discouraged by the colonel's severe look. Okay, fine, Petra said calmly. If. But how can you not check it out? Your bullets and grenades aren't going to kill these things, not nearly fast enough anyway. Mr. Riggs might have found the solution to get rid of the plants for good, and if he does, you'll save way more families than you can right now. And I had seen her friend act lots of times in games or on school stages, and it was definitely one of her best performances. She watched the colonel's face for his reaction and saw a small twitch of admiration at the corner of his lined mouth. Lieutenant, he asked the man at the communication console, is the Griffin out for maintenance? Yes, sir. Anaya's heart leapt. Prep it, the colonel said, then turned to Anaya. We'll take a pass over the island and try to evac your father. I'm going to, she said, startled by her boldness. She felt Dr. Weber put a cautioning hand on her shoulder. I can lead you right to him, Anaya plunged on. I've been there. Technically, this was true, but she hadn't been there in years and didn't really know the geography. But no way was she letting them go without her. If Dad had let her come along in the first place, he might not be in so much danger. You could also just tell us where he is, the colonel said. I'm useful, she persisted. The plants can't hurt me. I can go places the soldiers can't. My people are very highly trained. Have they been inside a pit plant? Or cut their way out with a chainsaw? Petra added. I want to go too. Startled, Anaya looked at Petra. You sure? She asked. It wasn't even her own father. And me, said Seth. You guys don't have to, Anaya said, touched by the dogged loyalty in Seth's solemn face. It's too dangerous, Dr. Weber said. I can't authorize it. Anaya expected the colonel to back the doctor up, but he wasn't even looking at her. He was looking at the three of them intently, and with far more interest than he had when they'd first arrived at the base. Anaya felt a twinge of discomfort. She wasn't entirely sure if she liked that look. It was the way someone might stare at an intriguing piece of machinery or a weapon. But all she cared about right now was that he let them go. You three might be assets to the mission, he said. Dr. Weber said, Colonel, they are civilians and they are minors. I want to go, Anaya insisted. For the first time, she was irritated by Dr. Weber. She just wanted to get going. Dad had been hit. He might need help right now. Carlene will flip, Dr. Weber said to Seth. Let her, Seth replied. I'm going. Colonel Pearson said, You're free to accompany them, Dr. Weber. Your feet won't even touch the ground. You'll stay in the helicopter the whole time. It's a straightforward extraction. We'll be ready to go in half an hour. Thank you, Anaya said, hoping they weren't already too late. The soldier sitting opposite Petra was unbelievably handsome. His name tag said Brock, which she knew was his last name, but it could also be an awesome first name. In fact, he had the same eyebrows as Brock on that ranch show she told everyone she hated but totally did not hate, and watched secretly in her bedroom. Looking at Captain Brock was the only way she could distract herself from the fact that she was strapped into a helicopter, bumping her way toward an island thrashing with cryptogenic plants. She really, really hoped she wasn't going to throw up all over Brock. She glanced at Seth, who actually seemed to be enjoying the ride, and then at Anaya, pressed against the opposite door. Petra wanted her to get her dad back, and she also wanted that special soil. The faster they got it, the faster they could start killing the plants, and the faster she'd stop changing. Maybe she'd even go completely back to normal, or as normal as she got with her water allergy. Right now, living with a water allergy seemed easy compared to turning into a reptile. Also in the cabin with them was a female soldier whose name tag said Jolie, yet she looked anything but jolly. Petra had never seen such humorless eyes. Colonel Pearson wasn't with them, so Brock was the commanding officer. He'd made that clear before they even took off. You don't do anything until I tell you to do it, he said, and right now, all you need to do is buckle up. Dr. Weber was wedged between the two soldiers, and she didn't look pleased at all. Before they'd left, she'd tried to talk them out of going, but Anaya hadn't budged, and Petra wasn't letting her friend go alone. On the school field, she'd freaked out and left everyone in the lurch, and that wasn't happening again. She shifted so her tiny tail wasn't jammed so much against the seat. She wondered how long before it was noticeable. With any luck, she'd have it hacked off before then. She squashed the thought down. Slow, deep breaths. This should be fairly routine, Brock said above the noise of the rotors. Once we reach the site, we'll land if possible. If not, we'll hover. We'll rappel down. Get a harness on your father. He was looking at Anaya now, and bring him up. And the soil samples, Anaya reminded him? No sweat, said Brock. My father said there were plants everywhere, Anaya told him. It might not be so easy. I'm an expert gardener, Brock said with a cocky smile, and I brought my pruning shears. He nodded at the bulging duffel bags. Petra had seen them pack at the base. We'll have your dad back in time for dinner, Brock told Anaya. Don't worry, Miss Riggs. Petra saw Anaya blush and felt irked. The captain had barely glanced her way the whole trip. I'm an expert gardener? Obviously a conceited jerk. And Brock? What a stupid name. We're coming up on Cordova Island, Jolie said. Let's open them up, Brock said, and he and Jolie popped open both doors, sliding them flush along the sides. Air galloped in, and the noise doubled. Below them, water flashed past, and Petra felt a surge of vertigo. Instinctively, she grabbed Seth's hand. He squeezed back. Pause.